Hello and welcome to the Two Dudes Movie Podcast, where we'll be breaking down Zack Snyder's Justice League, coming to HBO Max on March 18th. If you're in the US. If you're not, we don't know when we're going to see it. So hopefully there'll be a post view, but who knows. Anyway, for now, here is the preview. Zack Snyder's Justice League is finally here.
Yeah, crazy.
And what I think has been an absolutely fascinating series of events leading up to this movie over nearly 5 years since the release.
Like
in fact, it's been just nearly 5 years since the release of Batman vs Superman.
Yeah.
Which spun a huge series of events that would lead to where we are now, 2021.
It's crazy.
February.
It really is, because it does
release.
feel like it's been an age, and it feels like there's been so many ups and downs as to whether it even existed, or whether in what format it exists, or whether it's even going to be able to be finished, or what if it was to come out, how we'd see it. I think at one point it was just there was rumours going around, well, if it was to ever come out, it'd be a bit of voiceover, and you'd get some scenes, and then in between the scenes you'd get the unfinished CGI and Zack Snyder talking over it, saying what he'd have there, and that was a big prevailing theory for a while, and then eventually we got this.
This is somewhat mythical in what it is and what it is, and what we are going to attempt to do using the various sources I'm aware of, you're aware of, and that I can find. Try and muster together some talking points, some discussion of what happened, what led up to the situation, what we think of how this got to where it is, and then we'll spend the latter half of this episode more looking at the movie itself, what we're excited to see, what we're not excited to see, and where it might be headed beyond.
Yeah.
For those watching, the context of this recording is we are recording on February 15th, the day after the release of the last trailer. So there may have been new developments since this, but we will be covering everything up to and including that last, what I think was a pretty beautiful trailer.
It was very Zack Snyder, put it that way.
Yes. Okay, so Zack Snyder's Justice League. Who would have thought we'd ever have to put the word Zack Snyder's in front of this, because Justice League was his movie.
Yeah.
Zack Snyder was the driving force behind a reboot of the DC universe, following from both, was it Superman Returns, the one with Brandon Routh?
Yeah, Superman Returns, and obviously you have Nolan's Superman, Nolan's Batman, should say, as well.
And then you have the Nolan Batman movies.
Just ever so quickly, I don't think that the Superman Returns is as bad of a...
I've never seen it.
...whole movie as... Well, what I'd probably say is I'm a bit of a DC fanboy. I do like, obviously, the DC TV shows, and I feel Brandon Routh, especially, was a very good casting for that. It just came out at the wrong time, and it was pretty poorly made. And then, of course, you then got Zack Snyder's, as you say, Man of Steel. Man of Steel,
which was, at the time, I remember being rumoured to be part of the Nolan universe because Nolan was an executive producer. But from this point, we're very clear this is his own thing in a brand new universe. What happened was a darker tone. I am not personally a huge fan of the Man of Steel movie. No. I think it does a lot wrong. I think it's really dumb that Superman doesn't save his own dad.
There's a lot. Here's the thing, and I think this is almost, we'll get into it a bit later in terms of characterizations and stuff. The performances were good in the movie. The movie itself was good. The issue is that the way that Superman himself was written. Zack Snyder, I honestly believe, would make an incredible Batman movie. Because the universe he's created is very suited to that dark, gritty person that Batman is.
Yeah.
Superman is supposed to be the beacon of hope, and juxtaposing that. The issue is introducing that universe with a juxtaposing character would have been completely wrong, and so I can completely understand the decision to make Superman almost fit in.
So I am, whilst not a fan of the Man of Steel movie, we'll get onto more of what I am a fan of in a minute. But so the Man of Steel movie had lots of criticism level against it, but it was not in any way a critical or commercial bomb. It was just, I think, at worst considered sort of mediocre, and it made enough money.
Yeah.
Again, maybe not the £1 billion that DC had been used to, but it made some money. Then Marvel, steaming ahead
then Marvel.
in the thing, I think forced Warner Brothers' hands, and I don't think this was a studio decision, but I think it was, how can we get to a cinematic universe with 3 movies a year as quickly as possible, or 2 at that point? And I think the answer was, well, we need to introduce some more characters, and Zack Snyder ran with this. Again, I don't know the creative decisions, but it was clearly any logical businessman who wants, or woman who wants a universe, you need some characters. So the sequel to Man of Steel then becomes Batman v Superman, which is enormously controversial, and I don't actually know your thoughts on it. So for me, I adore that movie. I think that movie to me justifies the existence of Man of Steel, because while I don't particularly care for Man of Steel, I am such a fan of what they did. And to be clear, and I've said this many times on this podcast before, this ain't your grandpappy's Batman or Superman.
Yeah.
I don't know where I got that phrase from, but I say it a lot.
I think, here's the thing though, I think it is your grandpappy's Batman. That is Batman. I think, honestly, no. I understand what people find different about it, but I honestly think that was more Batman to me because of the Arkham games, because of, the likes of Dark Knight Returns and all the famous Batman comics. That was more Batman than Bale's Batman was.
Maybe. But I don't necessarily... and I can understand the criticism that people levy against this, that it is not what they want in a Batman movie. It's not what they want in a Superman movie. They don't work together, blah, 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 blah. Wonder Woman, why has she been thrown in here? It's too busy, it's too long, it's too boring. I think this is a sort of... and I'm going to use this word a lot. I think an artistic interpretation. I think what Zack Snyder has done has made, in his style, a DC movie, and has continued to do so. And I think there is a genuine struggle across movies at the moment, across franchise warfare, as I'll call it.
That's a great
where there is a struggle to allow creativity in for the fear that it retracts from what it is. Now, if I were to make an example of a movie that I think, or a franchise that has had absolutely no artistic vision levied against it, I'd use examples like Harry Potter. I think all the movies, the Fantastic Beasts movies, they're made the same, they're designed the same, they're thought of the same. I think Jurassic Park and all those movies. I think, in fact, to be fair, Fallen Kingdom was a pretty bloody good horror movie for half of it. But if you take, ignoring Fallen Kingdom, if you look at that, but if you add Fallen Kingdom, you go, this is a very different movie. This isn't a theme park gone mad. This is like not a haunted house horror, but it's a house, it's running around. And I think some of the greatest moments we've seen, some of the greatest movies in these franchises we've seen, not just comic books, into any, are where they've taken a franchise and they've tried to play with it. They've tried to have a little bit of fun with it. And I think a lot of people use James Gunn as an example of a person who did that for Marvel. But I would say Guardians of the Galaxy it's a bit more zany, but it's pretty much in line with where they were. I'd say Captain America the Winter Soldier is a complete U-turn from where Marvel was and what they were doing at that time.
And I think they've learned from that, because I think if you look into the future of what Marvel have planned, you look at Multiverse of Madness, you look at... I know there's still rumours of, people being pegged back because they didn't want it to be as horror-y as they thought it was, but the thing is they've gone... These, comic books, DC especially, I think actually really when you think about it, I think the reason why a lot of people love DC is because if you look at each comic book series or each comic book run or anything like that, different writers, different artists. Is that they're all different takes on the same character. You know, Brian Michael Bendis' version of Secret War was completely different to everyone else's versions of different comics, and the characters are different. And I think this is where you go, you know, Zack Snyder has taken the Batman universe and has done what any comic writer, creator, anyone like that would do, and gone, this is my version. Kevin Smith, quite notoriously, did a run on Batman just like he did with Daredevil, and it was his version of that character. And I think that's where it's important to have that in comic books, especially I think if DC, for me, should go for a different angle for what Marvel are doing and go, we're going to have these characters who you know and love and recognise, and they're all going to be paid, but, you know, Wonder Woman is always going to be Gal Gadot, but they don't necessarily all occur in the same universe because they're different people's. It's like having an action figure and going, I'm going to play with this action figure this day. It's the same action figure, but it's going to be a different story.
I think the costumes are a great way of examining this idea. So if you take Aquaman, I'll say it again, we sent your grandpappy's Aquaman.
No, he's brilliant.
This is a beautiful reimagining of that character that fits into this universe and makes sense in this universe. And the fact that he can talk to fish, who even cares? Because he looks really cool. Yeah,
it's Jason Momoa. I don't think anyone's going to really mind.
And I think those sorts of ideas that he injected into this universe is what made Batman vs Superman so engaging to me, because I personally found it like, maybe I would like to see a different kind of Batman movie, a different kind of Superman movie, but I really respect what you've done here, and I'm loving some of the choices. I think Doomsday looks like garbage. He looks stupid and he looks dumb, and just make him look more Doomsday. What does it matter? He still doesn't make a difference. But the fact that there were so many other hard, clear choices made that felt like, again, a universe was at play. The way the destruction in Man of Steel was justified, rectified, and built into the plot of this felt like I was watching the news as opposed to watching a flashy Marvel movie, which don't get me wrong, I adore, but I am very much in the camp of feeling like these stories could take place in the real world.
It's quite interesting because, like, Martin Scorsese turned around and said that he didn't like Marvel movies because they're all like roller coasters, it's like a theme park. But I think, you know, that is still obviously entertainment. I disagree that makes it not
it's
worthy
an experience.
Of film. But the point is the Marvel movies are flashy, they're over the top. You're supposed to go there and it's supposed to be a thrill ride and it's really fun. DC doesn't need to do that. DC can be another type of entertainment. It can be a film. You know, you look at Watchmen, and I think Watchmen is a great example of Zack Snyder being able to almost do what he wanted to. People don't like it because it veers from the source material a lot, and I get that. But Zack Snyder is a filmmaker, just like Christopher Nolan is. They make films. They don't make, you know, theme park rides. They make the films. It's art. They want to make it the way they want to make it. They're not going to make it the way that necessarily the studio makes it, which may have led, obviously, to what we then saw carry on. If I was to present... Sorry, carry on.
I was just saying, and I think one thing that we as fans need to remember, and there are movies and things that are made what I'm a real big fan of, and I'm like, but that's not right, that's been done wrong. But I think you have to always take a step back and write it, okay, but my Batman movie, my Dark Knight trilogy, my 1989 Batman, my Adam West Batman, my comic Batman, whichever, they're all still there. You can go and watch Adam West Batman if that's what Batman is to you. This doesn't take away from that. This adds to that. This is a different version. And I think, again, where Marvel is going, where DC might also be going with a Flashpoint, is I think people are coming to realise the wealth of having different versions of these things. Now being able to bring them together and, like...
Give me 3 Batmen. I do not care. Give me 3 Batmen.
Yeah, and I think even if you hate Affleck as Batman, if people despise him, although he is one of the most loved things about this movie, if you put him in a movie with Michael Keaton and, I don't know, George Clooney, for argument's sake, not that anyone wants to see that, I think people would want to see it because you've put 3 Batmen on the screen. They don't care that they hate George Clooney. They'll watch it, they'll hate watch him, and they'll love watch Michael Keaton. I just think you have to always remember that your version is still there. If this isn't for you, let the people who enjoy it, and let them not. And that's, I think, the message of the Snyder Cut as well is, if you hate it, fine. You don't have to listen to this. You really don't. We're not forcing you. If you don't want to watch it, just go do something else.
And I think, like, Stephen King says it best, and I think it's honestly a very good point, because obviously, me as a writer myself, I have to let go of my version of things when writing. Like, any writer, Stephen King said that his version of a story gets lost as soon as he gives it to a director. It's not his story anymore. Which is why he doesn't get involved very much. You know, The Shining and stuff, Stanley Kubrick took that and went, this is my version of it. Everyone has kind of said, okay, this is The Shining now. But actually, if you read the book, it's very different. Because that's Stephen King's version of it. You know, as a writer, you turn up and you go, right, this is my version of it. This is everything I'm going to put into it. But I know as soon as a director takes hold of it, they're going to do their own thing with it. And that's fine. They're not going to see exactly the same thing as me. And actually, it's a terrible thing for a writer to do, to impose what they want a director to put in. You know, you don't put camera movements in, you don't put everything into a script, because that takes creativity away from the person who's supposed to be the most creative. Because you trust a director to give their version of a movie. It makes sense when you look at the actual Justice League we got, because you see Joss Whedon in that, because you go, well, this is very much like Avengers. It's also the reason why it didn't work.
I think one of the things what you've just said is, as a writer, you would never write a script and put in at the end, put in a scene, this is the most important scene of a movie, this needs to be focused on. You'd be like, you should write a script that makes this the most important scene in a movie, and makes the person directing it realise, oh, this is the most important scene. If they think 2 scenes before that is actually the most important scene, they've either taken something else for it, or you've written an awful script because they have no idea what they should be focusing on. That's what your job should be. Is writing something that gives the right points, gives the right cues. Anyway, we're getting way off topic.
Onto my thoughts on Batman vs Superman.
Yes.
I enjoyed it, and I think I'll say that about probably most of the DC films. I enjoyed it. There are certainly aspects of it that I think they absolutely nailed, and Batfleck is one of them. To all the haters out there, I'm sorry, but he is amazing as the Dark Knight. He's a good Bruce Wayne too. And
yes,
I think
my
issue almost
really
comes
like him.
in that. I feel the issue with this movie is it's come one movie too early.
Maybe.
The world building felt rushed, especially with Batman. Not to a point where it took away from his character, but to a point where I felt like when things were becoming interesting, his dynamic with Alfred, the conversations he was having with Diana, I was like, oh, okay, there's something here, and then they move on. And I do feel like the fight with Doomsday was almost we need to find some way of putting Doomsday in here, and it felt rushed. The death of Superman storyline is so big of an event, it should either have been the focus of the movie or its own movie in itself. I'm not saying that... I think you can present this movie as itself without changing anything, and it'd been loved if there was a movie beforehand which set up the distrust that Bruce has for Superman, or the distrust that Clark has for Batman. I think that there should have been some sort of almost preface that sets that relationship up, even without them meeting.
One question: have you seen the Ultimate Edition?
No, I haven't. See, and I feel like that's probably why. But
it's really long. There is a lot more in there in terms of growth. I would agree. So when I went to see this movie, I saw it with some people who have no particular interest in comic book movies at all. And they were like, was that a good movie?
Yeah.
And I think that's where the movie falls down, is that if you aren't actually engaging with every single scene, this isn't probably that enjoyable. It's probably a lot of pretty pictures flashing up on the screen, but you just don't really care because I think the characters, they don't explain, they don't dive deeply into everything. You just sort of have to know that well, Batman's a detective and he's very rich and he's doing this and he's doing that, and you have
Yeah.
to sort of you have to know all that stuff going in. And if you don't know who all these characters are, if you don't know what they're doing here or why they're important or why they might be fighting, it's just irrelevant to you.
But I do have one thing to say on that, and that's the fact that I know if anyone's listening, they may have heard what we've already said about maybe with Spider-Man and not having origin stories for some people. We're not saying that we need them to explain everything, but because of the fact that they don't spend time in certain areas, or, you know, you can explain that Batman is a billionaire who's a very good detective by showing it on screen without actually saying it. The thing about Spider-Man is that all of his personality comes out in the way he acts.
I would enormously disagree. I think if you don't know who Spider-Man is, you would have absolutely no idea of the relevance of any of his scenes in Civil War. I think he is
No, but in Homecoming, it's very different to.
But in Homecoming, you have the time to establish that character. I think if you compare his appearance in Civil War, if you compare his appearance in Civil War to the appearance here with no origin story straight in, because that's what we get in Civil War. We just get a person. You're supposed to figure all this stuff out.
It's not like half the movie's centralised around Spider-Man, though, and this is what I'm saying.
That's what I'm saying. In Spider-Man scenes, I'm talking about Spider-Man scenes.
Yeah.
He's irrelevant. There's pointless knowing. If you don't know who he is already, those scenes mean nothing to you.
No.
There's no emotion. There's no thing tied to it because he's just some kid.
But the movie
who apparently has got superpowers. But I would say here it does enough if you know going in, which is why this movie I think was so critically panned, because if you're not invested, this movie isn't for you. This movie does not waste time, and I think that's a fair thing going in. I don't think if you put on Infinity War, you would have any idea what's going on. I think, again, if you're not invested in that universe, you won't know. You won't want to watch it. You'd be bored. You'd be like, is this good?
20 movies in.
Yes,
this
but
is
I
the
think...
second.
But I think if you've watched Man of Steel, if you understand comic books, not to a deep degree, you don't need to know a lot about Batman. I didn't know a particular amount about Batman. What did this come out? 2016? No, I guess in a bit. But I think it's this is not, and we'll touch on this right at the end. This is not a universe for the faint-hearted.
No.
You're either involved in this or you're not, and you're either interested in watching this or you're not. I don't think you can casually watch this movie. I don't think you can watch it once and be like, yeah, I won't watch this again. I think if you like it, you will want to see it. You'll want to watch that. The movie was financially incredibly successful. Maybe not as successful as they wanted it. It didn't do $1 billion, but it was financially successful enough to continue the universe.
Yeah. And
it was critically panned, which is where the trouble with Zack Snyder's Justice League started.
But the thing is that we see on countless occasions these days the difference between critical acclaim and public acclaim.
Yes.
More and more cases these days, you find that movies that are critically acclaimed are not as successful in general public, and it's just because usually people. You got to think about the variety of people who are being the critics are the ones looking for more the artistic side of things, whereas the people who are more looking for, to go and pay for a movie to go watch and enjoy themselves, it's enjoyment value. And they don't usually match up, which is why I find it incredibly frustrating sometimes when studios listen to critical acclaim more than they do public.
I think one of the things I found most frustrating with the idea of critics is there is not, and there isn't, a blanket coverall of what a movie should be. Is 2 hours too long for a movie? Because if a movie's too long at 2.5 hours, then every movie of 2.5 hours has to lose points, surely. There's no cookie cutter way of measuring.
Well, no, because if you make it engaging, then the 2.5 hour movie's good.
But I would say they are never measured against the same yardstick. I do not think the criticism against... No, but I don't think they are measured against the same in any way. So Batman vs Superman was almost compared as if it should have been like Avengers. But it wasn't an Avengers movie. It wasn't trying to be. You'd be better off comparing it to some Oscar prestige movie because I think that's more where it is in what it tries to achieve with the political arguments that are incited within it. I think it's a lot more thought-provoking than it is flashy and fun and a romp. It's not a romp. It is a hard line political drama, if you will. Again, even more so than Civil War did. If you compare Batman vs. Superman to Civil War, I'd say if you take out the airport fight scene, there's not much in it.
No.
One's colour palette's a bit brighter, but...
but that's the MCU. That's the universe it exists
yes,
in.
And I think that's why Civil War was hailed as so much better, but I don't think it did much better in any particular way. It was just more and more enjoyable casual watch. But Batman vs. Superman expected you to engage. It asked you to,
and I think that's the thing. The thing
or
about the Zack Snyder DC universe is that the characters I find, you got to remember, these characters have only been on screen for 2 movies at most.
Yeah.
They're more compelling. And I genuinely invest myself into these characters. Doesn't matter about the storyline or anything like that. The characters themselves is of a higher caliber than the MCU. I absolutely adore the MCU, but I find it took 20 movies for me to really, really invest myself into Tony Stark. I'm not saying he wasn't good or anything like that. I've still watched the first Iron Man and absolutely adored it and thought his characterization was great. But I felt less depth in that character from, all of his movies than the 2 that I felt in Batman vs. Superman.
I would agree in some principles. I'd say I think the difference with the MCU is the conversations that were had about the characters and the psyche that you dive into is in Batman vs. Superman, but that isn't in the MCU. There's no deep psychological assessment of these characters or debate or their ideologies.
But that's what I'm getting.
In anything really before maybe Winter Soldier is when it started. In when that political thriller got
Captain America is probably the most psychologically analysed character in those movies.
But what I'm saying is I wouldn't say that's a thing of the attachment or investment in those characters. I think it's almost you feel invested in the Batman vs. Superman's world because you feel like you understand them more as characters. You become attached to the MCU characters, but you don't know what they're thinking or why they're making the choices they're making. Whereas I think, again, in BVS, you really, really feel that. The characters themselves have been the driving force of this universe.
Yeah.
And I think Zack's vision of those characters and the way they interact and the way they fit within this universe has, and possibly will be in DC, second to none of sheer vision of this will work.
Yeah.
You have to give credit to the staying power of this idea. The fact that we're talking now 5 years on from Batman vs. Superman and we're still talking about the same characters in the same way. The critical panning of Batman vs. Superman and the very mixed, polarized audience reaction led to serious concerns about the Justice League movie. Obviously, Warner Brothers had the Justice League pegged as their Avengers movie. This needs to make $1 billion to be considered a success. Will another Batman vs. Superman outing do that? Now, I've seen several things talking about a progression of hope, that Man of Steel is very hopeless in its feeling, and there was supposed to be, through the several movies that Snyder would produce, an increase of that hope until you get to a much more hopeful universe with heroes now established in it.
Yeah.
And that is where we sort of end in terms of a production of Justice League. There were big concerns in relation to, or start in terms of the production of Justice League. There were big concerns in relation to how fun it was, how light it was, and whether Zack was the right person to steer the ship that was the Justice League movie.
Yeah.
And what I think is one of the most despicable things I've ever heard of in Hollywood, and I can't say this is what happened, but from everything I've seen and was there at the time and saw coming out in the news at the time, that they used the situation, the tragic situation of Snyder's daughter's suicide as a way for him to be pushed out of a project, wanting to take time away to grieve as any person would, using that as an opportunity to push him out and replace him with Joss Whedon.
Yeah, it's despicable. And to be honest, if you'd have told me that a year ago, 2 years ago, I wouldn't have necessarily believed that would have been sole motivation. However, with everything that's came out with what Joss Whedon might have done and everything that Ray Fisher's said, it's now entirely believable that is exactly it. Because these people obviously have no morals.
Yes, it feels very much like a situation where some people wanted credit, and we also know that Jeff Johns was involved in a significant part in the hiring of Joss Whedon. And it is a shame that certain people were in positions that allowed them to manipulate things to their advantage, which turned out quite catastrophically to not be their advantage. And I think it is in kudos in no form to Ray Fisher to seriously, properly, and unflinchingly standing up to Warner Brothers and Joss Whedon to the point where it's become clear of the beyond inappropriate behavior that happened on that set and with these people. Mm-hmm. And I think it's, again, vindication to Zack Snyder's Justice League. I think it proves that its existence. It wasn't it was a tumultuous production, it went wrong. It was proved to be something where someone just believed in it and they tried to have that vision taken away so some other people could take the credit. Yeah. And I'm really glad that Snyder has been able to come back and, we'll talk on this later, complete, in quotation marks, his vision and potentially take it further.
Yeah. So, in terms of the Justice League that came out,
which we will be referring to as it has been colloquially online as Justice League.
Yes. In terms of the Justice League, I remember watching this. I was in a different country at this time, and we watched it on the day it came out, and the response in the theatre, and I'll put it this way, it was the same theatre, probably the same group of people I then watched Infinity War with. The difference was amazing. It was just, you couldn't put two polar opposite audience reactions to it. Now, here's the thing. I came out of that Justice League, not really knowing what had gone on with Zack Snyder. Obviously, not a lot had really came out at the time, especially not in mainstream media. And I went, that was fun, but it wasn't good. And I think here's the thing that made it fun. The characterization, I'm not talking about what they're saying, I'm talking about how they played the characters, was very, at points, similar to how they presented themselves in Zack Snyder's like Batman vs Superman and stuff. And I think that made me enjoy these characters even more. I completely agree with what you said previously of the issue people had with Zack Snyder's version of Superman. For me, Superman is the beacon of hope. He's hope in the face of hopelessness. And he was more like that in this movie. But there were glaring issues. And for me, at the time, starting to learn how writing worked, I could see them. I was just learning how writing worked, and I could see there was just issues with the plot, with the way the story worked, with the way that the pacing was going on, with the tone. It was just a mess. It felt like a sort of movie that was created by someone who wanted what they wanted and everyone else disagreed with them.
I remember this movie specifically. Again, I saw this with a group of people of varying degrees of interest. And something that I found really interesting in my own perception is I'm a very positive outlet when it comes to a movie. So, like, if I've enjoyed the time I've watched a movie, I'm positive about a movie, and I find it, or used to find it, a lot more difficult to not see the criticisms, but acknowledge critical things as I watch something. It would more just be, well, that was fun, enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And I think I genuinely remember this as being one of the first movies I watched. To compare with Batman vs Superman, I was just like, this is so amazing, this is so great. Because I didn't see the problems, because I was watching it, of course, from my perspective. But then I'm watching Justice League, sitting, watching, enjoying, and just then being like, oh, this was all right, and then just being like, did I enjoy that?
Yeah.
Was that awful? Was that
Yeah.
was that rubbish? And I've just I don't think I've watched it since.
No, I was going to and couldn't bring myself to do it.
And I've just been fascinated ever since if it's a good movie or not, to be honest. I think the biggest problems I had was it just doesn't make any sense, mostly. A lot of the things feel random and irrelevant, and a lot of the choices feel they've been made for the sake of it, as opposed to the film being made because that was the, if you will, artist's intent, script intent. I would say some things were fantastic. I think the Batman bit at the start with Gordon is really cool. Again, lots of things cool, but I just don't think it was a cohesive thing. And I think from everything we've heard since about set leaks and everything that was happening, and like a particular scene where Gal Gadot didn't want to have Ezra Miller fall into her chest, and just maybe did that with a stunt double because she outright refused to do it. I think you have to look at it and go, yeah, this probably was awful, and pretty much everyone could tell at different points, like you said, that this just wasn't a good idea, but they went with it anyway, because they thought it was a really good idea.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's much more to say other than that this just wasn't the movie in any way that people expected, hoped for, continued. And I think directors have come out since then and said, basically, no director who works in the DC universe now considers this in any way canon.
No.
And they all consider that what Zack's vision was canon. So whether certain things that we see take place in Zack Snyder's Justice League move forward or don't move forward, it will be interesting to see.
Yeah.
But it's patently clear that this is not regarded in any way, without having to rewatch it, as good or fair or, well, it's fine, but it's not great. It just seems to be pretty poor. It's
important, exactly. It's important to sort of note that there have been, because I am a big comic book person, I love both Marvel and DC. I'm more of a DC comic person, I'll be honest with you. But the Marvel films are 10 times better at the moment. There have been duds in the MCU. There have been movies that just have not worked in the MCU.
Yep.
Most of them.
I would disagree.
Movies.
Nope, they're excellent.
But
you're looking at them wrong.
The point is, this is different. This is not just a bad movie. This is not just not exactly the level we expect. This movie just... First of all, it looked like it had been... like tea had been spilt on it for most of the movie. But,
why is there a red sky?
Yeah, exactly. But it just...
so ugly.
It felt like it was just... I wouldn't even go as far as saying that it felt like a student-made DC movie, but in terms of the pacing and the structure of the movie, yeah, God, it was horrible.
Muddy,
exactly.
Visually, story-wise, everything just felt muddy and like a swamp, like you're walking through a swamp. The cut, the Justice League cut, was critically panned.
Big surprise.
It didn't do particularly well financially, which led to the inception of the... And I believe this happened after release. I'm not certain, but it might have come
I'm pretty sure just before it.
Basically, there was a hashtag called Release the Snyder Cut, which will you've seen trending as recently as February, if you're watching, because it was trending all day yesterday.
Yeah.
In the United Kingdom, anyway. Zack Snyder's Justice League is now here, and it has been a interesting road to it being released.
Yeah.
Without getting too much into what specific people have said, there was a portion of the internet, quite a large portion, which has driven me just to sheer frustration with their attitude of denialism, and as if its existence somehow hurts them. And just the way that some reporters were adamantly arguing and like calling people out for how dare you say this thing exists. It obviously doesn't. Yeah. It's footage on a cutting room floor. There's no such thing as a Snyder cut. And we'll get onto what the Snyder cut is in a sec. But just the idea that the very existence of a version, his version of a movie, just doesn't exist in any form, and just feverishly fighting to defend it. There was another portion of the internet, however, who looked at what I can only see as just the facts, and what they could see and what they could gather, and not that they necessarily defended at every point, but basically said this might exist, this could exist, or this does exist. And as it turns out, all of those people were the ones looking down the correct path. Yeah. And all the other people are now embarrassing themselves on Twitter saying how glad they are that it's been released and all this and all that. And I'm like, you're the very people who tore this down, tore anyone who followed it down, called out people for being like internet trolls and all this stuff, only for it to turn out to be one of the biggest events of 2021 movie-wise.
Yeah. So, for those of you who don't know, this is how movies work. When things are filmed, they're saved.
That's one way, but I think even more importantly, when things are filmed, they are not necessarily finished before they are edited together and looked at, and it's like draft cuts and just. I think the word is a rough cut, where you basically
rough cuts,
cut.
You have dailies, you have all these different things that get put together. Because shoots don't usually happen over one day. As much as like Stanley Kubrick would like to make sure that everyone has 50,000 takes of stuff, that's not how it always works. A lot of time you'll be shooting a scene or a set of scenes for a couple of days. And if you don't necessarily get it on the first day, what a director and an editor can do is put together the scenes that you've done to play it back to you for further takes. Which is why you have things like reshoots. Because they see the shoot and they go, oh, actually, I'd like you to do this instead. So they can show the actors these things. They exist, which is probably where a lot of the footage may have came from at points, which were just not quite finished yet. Maybe they weren't done with special effects. Maybe they needed to reshoot a couple of bits of the scene, but they had a rough idea so they could show someone and go, this is what this scene might look like. So they could give it to, say, I don't know, Hans Zimmer. They can go, this is what this scene's probably going to look like. Can you do a score for it?
Junkie XL, I believe.
Junkie XL.
Or was he the guy that replaced? I can't remember.
No,
One
he's
of them.
The guy who replaced it. It was Hans Zimmer to begin with. No, it was Danny Elfman.
Yeah, it was Junkie XL who was hired by Snyder.
Yeah.
And then he was replaced for Justice League by what's the word? By Joss Whedon with Danny Elfman.
Danny Elfman. So, but here's the thing. This is the thing.
Yes, it was Junkie XL.
Yeah, don't underestimate how much footage can exist even before you get to the editing room. And also, when you get to an editing room, it's not like when you get rid of shots, you delete them. And this is why director's cut exists in general. Yeah,
one of the other things to remember is we know that about Zack Snyder, he likes to make long movies.
Yeah.
We know that he released another however many minutes of extra footages in the Ultimate Edition of Batman v Superman. They all that wasn't reshoots, that wasn't added on. That was part of his original script and his original idea. But for commercial reasons, as movies are made for, they are cut down to fit within what normal people like to view. I don't think a 3-hour movie is great for a cinema. The 4-hour Zack Snyder's Justice League that we ended up with could not play in a cinema because who wants to sit there for that long? But I think it's important to remember that the majority of this did exist. It was in a cut form, and that is the reason Warner Brothers were unhappy, because they were scared by this cut.
Yeah.
They didn't just guess that they hated everything he'd done. They looked at what he'd put together. They looked at what he'd had so far and were like, I don't like this.
Yeah.
Zack Snyder presumably took that with him. He was like, fine, I'll take my cut. I'm off. You've sacked me for Joss Whedon. He was probably very gracious about it, given he seems like actually a very nice man from all the interviews I've seen. And since then, we knew several people begun to be showed and were shared with his cut of Justice League, including several of the main cast members who all have since tweeted out support.
And that's when I knew this thing was real. And I think it was at that point. Because before that, you had a lot of people, as you say, making noise online. And it could have very easily been a lot of real people and some bots which made it trending. But then as soon as, like, Gal Gadot and Ben Affleck, especially Ben Affleck, put it out there, I was like, okay, they know something a lot more than the rest of us do. This is real.
So one person who I follow, along with lots of other movie people I watch, but who I have seen the credibility fly, specifically in relation to the Snyder Cut, being Grace Randolph from Beyond the Trailer, who is now had several exclusive interviews with Zack Snyder since this has been officially announced, which basically verifies that she knew what she was talking about most of the time, and a lot of the people who are now turning on this and trying to turn it round just aren't going to... Snyder is not going to look at them twice because he knows that they were the naysayers and they were this, and some people who didn't necessarily say this definitely exists, we must support this, but supported the concept and the idea that it might exist and that things needed to progress.
But this is also different, and I do want to kind of point this out there, because this is different to what happened with Sonic. Like, this isn't just the next thing we want to moaning and getting onto stuff.
The next thing is the aggression that was targeted not just at the idea, but the fans who were supporting this. I can't remember what they're called. They have a name, a fandom, but the release for Snyder Cut fandom, who were tweeting this out, who've raised hundreds of thousands of pounds for charity, including suicide prevention, in honor of Zack Snyder's daughter. And I think the idea that those are the people who are just trolling and trying to take the mick and just like you've said with Sonic, reference there, make demands and get them, is laughable.
Yeah. I think it's ridiculous because, you got to look at these people and you go, these people saw an injustice. And I think it's ironic that that's the way it is, because obviously of what we're talking about, because of the fact it's the Justice League. But they saw an injustice to a director who put his heart and soul into something,
who presumably they loved,
something absolutely horrible, and gone, no, this deserves fighting for. It's just the same as, yes, it's quite easy to turn around and say, well, he's a multi-billionaire and all, these people have loads of money.
I don't think he's quite a billionaire. But
you know what I mean, is that all these people, yes, they have a lot of money.
Zack Snyder, if you're a billionaire, I'll take $1 billion.
Zack Snyder,
for supporting
if you're listening to this, please like it and subscribe. That'd be great.
If you personally, Zack Snyder, don't tweet or anything, that's fine. Don't put yourself out. But,
just
like and subscribe. Like and subscribe for more.
But, just as you would with any artist, you see people raising a lot of money for artists and stuff like that, especially at the moment during COVID. But if you see someone putting their heart and soul in something, you're going to fight for it. And the fact that these people, who probably the kindest people on earth, are doing stuff like that. Yeah, there's some fanatics around them. Of course there are. There isn't any fandom. But calling them aggressive and trolls and likening them to people who genuinely cause harm online.
Yeah.
And it's just not fair.
It's just been quite frustrating to see. And again, I think we, in the very early stages of our existence, as a podcast and as a pair of people, I think one of the things we want to do and have tried to do in everything we've done so far is just be fair to the reality of the situation. Yes, we would love to see this, that, the other, but also if you don't want to see that, that's fine. If we really hate something, but it's probably going to carry on. Or, but so what if they make another one? God, you haven't even heard what I have to say about Godzilla vs. Kong. You don't even know. But I can tell you...
doesn't like it.
I can tell you that I also don't care that it exists, and I will continue to bask in its effervescent stupidity. Just a pause for anyone who... Because I assume there's quite a big crossover here. Why? Why does monkey punch lizard? Anyway, that's all I have to say on that. But I think we want to be fair, and I think several of the people who we both follow, who are different people, we don't just follow the same thing, we don't have the same sources of news and information. No. We have a wealth and breadth of people who talk about this stuff. I think I'm aware and have become more aware as things progress, especially in recent times with Marvel stuff and DC stuff being so... People want headlines on that. The people who are willing to clickbait and the people who are willing to basically tell the news and not just jump on a bandwagon of, well, we hate the Snyder Cut doesn't exist. Yeah. Well, do you actually know that it doesn't exist, or are you just saying that because someone else said it? Because it's very hard in life. I'll give you some tips. It's very hard to prove something doesn't exist. Because you have to have searched everywhere and not found it. Yeah. You know what I mean?
You have to have literal access to Zack Snyder's,
life.
Basement.
But what if it's not in his basement, It's just very hard to ever prove in life something doesn't exist. And the idea that people were so feverishly adamant that this doesn't exist, this will never exist, this is never going to happen, it's just laughable. It's just ludicrous when you look at it now. And I think these people genuinely need to take a pause and check, are they reporting or are they trying to be the news?
But there's also a difference there as well. And I think... you cannot believe that something is going to happen. For a good while, remember it has been 5 years, for a good while, I never believed that Warner Brothers would ever, bow down, I'd say, to Zack Snyder and say, you know what, we were wrong. I never thought Warner Brothers would ever do that. I never thought it'd ever be made. And I always believed there'd be some form of Snyder Cut, but as I said at the start, I didn't know if it was going to be a case of it was bits of scenes and then stills, or bits of scenes and then the prefab for this is what we thought we wouldn't want to film. And then when they announced it during COVID, we were like, well, okay, will we have a very similar thing where it's going to be unfinished because people can't reshoot things? And then they managed to do it all. And I'm like, oh, okay. It's only then when it got up to probably the end of last year where we suddenly went, oh, this is a 4-hour big reshoot everything. This is now a whole thing. This isn't just it. But it wasn't until then that we knew exactly what it was going to be. But these people saying and being aggressive towards other people just because they don't believe it exists, that's where the line gets crossed. You can say that you can believe that something's not going to come out. You can believe that it's not going to come out in a way that other people think it is. But just being aggressive and saying, and in any form of thing, if you're going to be aggressive towards someone else just because of the way that they believe in things, the hint to you, that's not a good thing to do. Don't do it. It's not good. Stop it.
I think so. Another person I'll quote, Kevin Smith.
Yeah.
So one of the quotes that he put out, and I'll paraphrase here. Basically, he said, but it's nothing like a finished thing. It's something, again, that we've just talked about, that people in production would watch, people making the movie would watch to learn about it, to know about it. It's not something that's a finished product. It's not something that's designed to be a finished product. It's something that was there, but is in significant way proof of concept. It is proof that this idea works.
Yeah, exactly. And proof of concept is a big thing, and as you say, that's the reason why Warner Brothers knew that they didn't like what he was doing.
Yeah, so that's where we sort of ended, and then there was a day, and it was, I can't remember what the day specifically was, but it was something to do with, basically it was like an investors day or a day when they were having... No, it wasn't
DC Fandom, was it? That was
no, they were having a meeting, and it was in December maybe last year. It was in 2019, the end of 2019 sometime. And again, a couple of the sources again who have now been validated in their support of this idea, talking beyond the trailer, talking a couple of others, said that this is the day, this is a specific day where people need to, if they want this, tweet about it, tweet this, get this hashtag trending because people will notice. And on that day, yes, lots of fans did it, but several members of the cast also did it in support. And then you end up where we are now, and at DC Fandom, which was in August 2020, you have announced Zack Snyder's Justice League.
That was crazy.
And there will be lots of people, you touched on it earlier, the Sonic the Hedgehog situation, who will consider this a loss in the power of creativity or what you're making. Now it's just, if a fan doesn't want it, you have to change it. But I think this is something very, very different from what happened in the Sonic situation, because this is vindication for a man, a director whose name has effectively been tarnished with the idea of Justice League, and that he is somehow lying and causing a problem for publicity, when all he wanted to do was finish his vision and not have his name tainted with Justice League, and him be associated with that in any way.
The difference is that the creatives are on the side of the people campaigning. Yes. And I think that this is the thing, is what happened with... Like, I saw Sonic, I know you haven't. I enjoyed Sonic, and I do think that the change made was a good thing. I don't think it sets a good precedent, but at the same time, if you're in the filmmaking industry, there's a very small amount of people, you can probably count them on one hand, who can make the film that they want to make, regardless of what fans want.
I think I would say the problem with the Sonic situation, and the concern that I have with it, is the people who had to put the overtime in to reanimate an entire character, the main character in a movie, were again not the people who got to make that decision.
Yeah.
I think, again, the animators would have been told, you need to animate this. They animate that and then get told, actually, no, the fans have said they don't want this. So if you were an animator, a Sonic the Hedgehog fan, going, this is awful, this is dumb, you couldn't say anything, you couldn't do anything, you had to animate it, and now they're telling you to do all that work you just did again because there's been fan outcry. And I find it difficult, especially as we hear continually stories out of every seemingly video game studio, animation studio, about crunch. And I just feel bad knowing that crunch time was caused by fan outcry. Way off topic. But this, again, as you said, this was a creative-led decision. This wasn't because people told Zack Snyder to make it. This was because Zack said, I've got a movie I can show you. I want to finish this. What is also really, really important for everyone to know and understand, this is not the movie that would have been released in 2017 when Zack Snyder made that movie, which he has come out and said himself, this is the movie with the benefit of hindsight, with knowing what went wrong with that, knowing why, he has fixed a lot of the mistakes and added certain elements which were not in the movie, which we will again get to in a couple of minutes. This is not the same Snyder Cut that people saw. This is not, if you will, the Snyder Cut. This is Zack Snyder's Justice League.
Yeah, and this will be probably better because he's had 5 years to sit on it, and 5 years to learn from what the fans wanted, and hear all people's cries and go, oh, actually, look, I know as a writer, writing is an exercise in perfectionism. At one point, you've got to say, no, I've got to stop. He's had 5 years longer than he would have done. Say probably 6, 7. Actually, he probably would have had the first drafts he's probably had it first written a good while before he even started to make it. So he's had that long to sort of sit there and go, I want to make this better. Mm-hmm. And yes, I don't know exactly how much more he's filmed, but yes, a lot of it is the current movie he had. But even in terms of, as a director, you've got choice over colour grading, and you've got choice over pacing, and Zack Snyder's a massive fan of slow-mo. He's got choice over which scenes he puts slow-mo in and how the effects look. Those are all things that 5 years stewing in the brain, he'd have had time to make them a lot better. So this is probably going to be a much better movie than we would have got. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to be good. I still think it's still going to be problematic, and I think this is the thing you've also got.
Another thing is, people have this expectation, certain people have an expectation that this will suck and this will be awful. And yes, if you didn't like Batman vs Superman, you will hate this movie, you will not like it. Just don't even bother watching it, because I don't want to hear your complaints about it, because it's not for you. If you want to give it a go, you're willing to be open-minded, fine. But if you don't like it, for the exact same reasons, you were warned. Yeah. It's gonna be in that vein of massive world building, very dark, very
it's not going to be
thematic
the best
and thoughtful
film ever. Everyone's going to love it, stuff like that. That's not going to be what it's going to be.
I think some people on the open fence will love this movie.
Yeah.
And I think what's very important is those of us that are in the middle, enjoy it, don't enjoy it. I certainly won't be watching it in one sitting. This isn't something that matters. No. And I think genuinely at the time when we're in a pandemic, living off 5 years of hype, and I would be saying the exact same thing if you had a movie like Endgame coming out right now. Just be aware that this is a movie and it doesn't matter. And going online and telling everyone they suck and that they should kill themselves because you're unhappy, or because they said they liked something that you don't like, or because they said they didn't like something you don't like. Yeah. You just need to slow down and be nice, because I am already prepared for the absolute hellstrom that Twitter will be the day this thing comes out, where every single time someone writes something nice, someone will reply with something negative, and every time it's something negative, they'll be like, well, actually, you suck, or you suck, or whatever.
And it won't be coherent, and it won't be intelligent conversation. No, that's Twitter.
And I think sometimes you can have intelligent conversation, and I think this is not going to be a perfect movie. I would love to be able to, and this podcast is, again, a forum for us, specifically us, to discuss and say, well, we didn't like this. This is what we do. A lot of this podcast is supposed to be what we do, what we think. And to touch more on that, the comment section will always be a place where if you disagree with us, fine. If you're going to articulate your points and spend the time writing that, but if you're going to call us idiots and we don't know what we're talking about and we shouldn't be allowed on the internet and whatever, just go away. We don't care. Go away.
We're not asking you to subscribe. You can subscribe because it puts our numbers up. We're not going to listen to you.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your feedback, but if all you want to do is call me an idiot, I know. Why do you think I'm doing this?
It's fine.
Yeah. So please just be nice on the internet, because I'm just sick and tired of it. I feel like an old man. I'm just like, stop it, you. Get off my lawn. Get off my Twitter lawn with your negativity. Yeah. And we will. I would love to interact with anyone watching this on Twitter in relation to the Zack Snyder's Justice League and what you think, what you're excited to see, what you're not excited to see. Love to hear why you think this should never have been made, as long as you're going to have coherent, proper conversation.
Yeah.
So,
moving on from the Twitter hellstrom, should we actually get into what we think is going to happen?
Yes. So, what do we think is going to happen? What do we think this movie is about? What I can tell you as semi-fact, because I'm pulling lots of different sources together and trying to muddle together exactly and precisely what this movie is made up of. The majority of this movie is movie that was shot for the original Justice League that was made. The majority of it is still things, not necessarily things that would have made the final cut at that point, but things that were shot at the original point.
And okay, so here's my question to you, because I don't actually know the answer to this.
I'll do my best.
How much of Zack Snyder's stuff was in the original Justice League, and how much
conflicting?
How much have we seen before? Conflicting
reports. I think if you include all the shots that were edited. So there is several. The biggest example being the shots of the sky that are all red. Yeah. Because the sky's red. I think if you include all of those as well, maybe not though. Maybe just ones that are missing. There was about half an hour of Snyder's Justice League in Justice League.
2-hour movie.
In the 2-hour movie, about half an hour. In the new movie, there are 0 shots that were shot by Joss Whedon. There is absolutely nothing he shot in this movie. There will be things that appeared in his movie, because like I said, there was a portion of Snyder in his movie, and a portion of things, and I don't know, again, it's very difficult. This isn't something that has been had dissertations written upon, so it's not quite a scientific fact. But the idea of shots, like there's a shot, not just for Red Sky stuff, there's a shot with Wonder Woman that had, in Snyder's original trailers, Cyborg and Aquaman behind her, and in the final movie, she is on her own. Yeah. And the sky's red. There are shots like that. I'm not sure where they fall across the line.
Okay. So it's safe to say, because from the trailers and stuff, it's safe to say that a lot of the footage we've not seen before.
Yes, there is. a ridiculous amount of footage that not only wasn't seen in a previous movie, but was never seen in terms of trailers.
Yeah.
Because it was, again, left probably on the cutting room floor from an edit time perspective.
Yeah.
Like we've established a few minutes ago, this is not the Snyder cut of the 2017 movie. This is Snyder's final ultimate vision of what he can produce, as ultimate as it can be, for the movie.
Yeah.
What we do know is that reshoots took place.
Yeah.
For, I believe,
we've got Jared Leto's Joker.
Most of the main characters, which added several things. One cameo that I will not spoil because we have not even seen it yet, and I'm not certain it's even in it, but potentially another major character appearing. Jared Leto's Joker is something that was rumored to potentially be appearing and has now since in images and the trailer itself been confirmed to be a part of this movie, which again, he was not in any way part of the original movie, but again, having since he's since added it to complete his vision. There are around 4 to 5 minutes of brand new additional footage shot. I think the bulk of that will lie around the presence of Jared Leto's Joker. Yeah,
he's going to do a lot more with the dream sequence from by the sounds of things.
Yes, I think this is a very, very interesting project and a very interesting idea. The idea that you can return to something, expand upon it greatly, and basically make a new and improved version in the way that it would be like the Avengers doing a new cut. Not that we would do a Whedon cut because Joss Whedon sucks. But if you were to do a new cut of Avengers and including characters like Captain Marvel,
or the Ancient One, who we knew was there, sort of thing.
Or the Ancient One, who we knew, yes. So adding those sorts of ideas, like, Captain Marvel, well, it would make sense if she comes back to Earth and then disappears again, because why wouldn't she respond to this time? Because the Earth's in danger, or maybe we see her get the call, but she's busy in a different situation, and it's a little bit scene. Something to that effect. And it is adding onto a predestined product, if you will. It's something that was already finished.
But it helps fact that we've not seen most of it.
Yes.
Because we don't like this is not the same plot as what we like. I hope no one's going into this thinking, but they're still going to go the same thing. They're still going to fight Steppenwolf at the end, and it's still going to be the whole trying to separate the mother boxes and stuff. A lot of that may be similar.
Yes.
But even by the trailers, it looks completely different.
Mm-hmm. I think again, this will be a very interesting thing. One huge change that has almost been forgotten in terms of it being a change, because I had to realise that, was Black Suit Superman was never included.
He was told by Warner Brothers he wasn't allowed to do Black Suit Superman. And then when he took it away, he went, I'm doing Black Suit Superman. You can't tell me not to.
Well, apparently they played with screen tests. I've seen reports or something. They tried it, but it was too dark, or they didn't like it, and they wanted it. They wanted him just to look normal, or people wouldn't recognise that as Superman, or whatever. I don't know.
No, you wouldn't recognise it as Superman as if he had a mustache, but then they digitally altered it off. That wouldn't be Superman. But
the idea being that lots of stuff has changed. This is not a movie you will see before. This is as far as I'd be concerned, this is a new movie. This is just not. This is not the same movie that was going to be released. No. This is for all intents and purposes, a brand new movie. Yeah. An alternate timeline, if you will. Yeah. So to talk on some of the biggest changes we're aware of, we've seen, I am adoring Black Suit Superman. I think it looks very, very cool. I think one of the biggest things I feel in this trailer, and again, it's all in Zack Snyder's style, is so the way I compare DC and Marvel is Marvel heroes are men who become gods. Yeah. And DC are gods who become men.
And Batman.
But he's pretty much a god anyway. Because Batman could defeat, people. Just to clarify it, with preparedness time, Batman could actually defeat any single living thing, probably any army, So don't fight Batman, because he will beat you. Jared Leto's Joker.
I'm really happy he's got a second chance, because I didn't hate his version of Joker. I just feel like it didn't get the time needed for people to get used to it.
I thought it was fascinating. There was a, rather than using the typical mob element of Batman villains, they used modern gang crime, and I thought that was fascinating. I thought the idea of all these tattooed, strip club going people, that's where we meet with Joker. I think that's a really interesting idea, and I think that's almost a Batman movie I would really want to see, just seeing that kind of Gotham where it's all gang crime.
Well, that's why I loved the new Harley Quinn movie.
I haven't seen it still.
If you like it, you should.
The new look that Joker has, we're saying goodbye to tattoos, goodbye to damaged forehead, and whatever you think of them, they're gone. It's irrelevant. I don't personally care either way. I think it wouldn't have made any difference if they were still in his face.
Yeah.
I don't think the reason he was unsuccessful was because he had tattoos. I think it was everything combined.
I think the movie was the reason why.
Yeah, I think it was just a combination of all the elements, the choices that were made about him that people didn't like. Anyway, he has a new look, an excellent new look in a doctor's gown and mask around his neck, which shows him in Arkham comfortable, happy, probably just being a doctor.
And then when he turns in the trailer, he says that this is no place for honor. Is it Batman? And the way he says Batman is the same way as he said Batman before, so it's easily the same character. But it just, to be honest, I've always been a fan, just like I am with any other DC character, of different iterations of Joker, and Jared Leto's was still the Joker. He was still the Joker. He just wasn't Heath Ledger's, and that's perfectly fine. And I don't want them, like, people don't. I really hope they haven't sort of gone, oh well, he's got long hair now, and we want him to make him like Heath Ledger's in other ways. So because I don't feel like Jared Leto is that kind of actor. He has got his one version of Joker, and he will always play the same version of him.
Yeah. So, I am certainly interested to see more. Other things, we have our more time with Cyborg, which I'll be excited to see. Yeah. We have a lot of the Flash scenes. We know that Kirstie Clemens scenes that were cut of her as Iris West were cut. They are back in. That will be exciting to see.
Very pleased to see a person of colour playing Iris West. Again, proving the fact that it doesn't matter what colour you are, you can play a comic book character. And also because it falls in the vein of Candice Patton, who I think was really good as Iris West.
While I watched quite a few seasons of The Flash, I've since geared off. I think it is absolute kudos to her as an actress. Can't remember who it is. You just said her name.
Candice Patton
on The Flash, who has consolidated her as the quintessential form of Iris West, and now other mediums, including movies, copying that is just excellent to see. We stan it.
Yeah.
The opening scene of Justice League, probably the best bit of the movie, where we see Green Lanterns, we see all that sort of stuff. I presume a lot of that will be expanded with more appearance from Darkseid and more stuff with Darkseid in general, because Darkseid's actually in this movie.
Woohoo!
Another enormous change.
Like Darkseid as well.
He looks very interesting.
I think this is the one time I've seen a villain in this universe and gone, oh yeah, that's this person. I think when I first saw Doomsday, I was like, wait, who's that? Steppenwolf again. I'm not a fan of the Steppenwolf design. Obviously, the Justice League one was crap, but this one's better. But it's not still great. I don't really like it still. But it's that character. I think I just don't think it translates very well. Whereas Darkseid, I saw him and I was like, "Ooh, he's menacing. This guy looks good." I don't know how I feel though, and I want to ask you about how you feel of the reverberations from Superman dying.
I thought that was excellent.
Yeah.
I thought that was such a cool idea that his almost last breath would have such, because you have ended effectively a god, you've killed a god.
As Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor says,
it would have such power, it would reverberate across the universe, and that is why the bell is rung. The bell is rung by Superman.
And I understand that thematically and metaphorically. I think that the physical execution of it feels a bit, and this is probably just me being scarred by the Inhumans TV show, it just felt a bit Black Bolty.
Yeah, but also no. I think it's justified in its
thematic
metaphorism.
Meaning. Yeah.
Is that a good phrase? But I thought it was justified. I thought it was okay. Yeah. One of the things I am frustrated by is the release plan for this. So originally it was a movie as the Snyder Cut, and then Zack Snyder's Justice League becoming a 4-hour movie was talk of being a some-part miniseries on HBO Max.
Yeah, because he said it was going to be like in 4 different hours, isn't it?
Yes.
That's what he said in Fandom, I believe.
Now, what has been confirmed several times over since it was rumored to be is that it's now a 4-hour movie. That is confirmed.
That's due to the contract side of it, though, isn't it?
And the articles that I've seen in the past few days have been alluding to, and somehow just straight out saying that it was basically due to contracts and that it would be too difficult to navigate renegotiating contracts for an appearance per episode as an appearance in a movie. So who cares?
Just pay them one big flat fee. I don't get it, but sure.
I assume it's just to do with the way contracts work.
I think it's because the Actors Guild in America has much higher union laws than it does over here.
I don't know. That's an interesting question. Anyway, I will find it frustrating to watch a 4-hour movie because I won't be watching a 4-hour movie. My intention from now, and we'll see if this pans out, is to watch Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman, maybe Wonder Woman, and...
I'm glad how you're ignoring Justice League. Not Justice League, ignoring Suicide Squad.
It was just because it's not relevant. I do enjoy Suicide Squad.
Oh, we'll get onto that at some point.
I don't necessarily think it's amazing, but I did enjoy it. Mostly just for the sheer fun of all the different characters. Anyway, off topic.
Yeah.
And that is a different podcast to ours.
Yeah.
So I think it's gonna be a hard watch, a hard 4-hour slog, and I have no intention of watching it all in one go. Probably in about hour stints, which is why our coverage will be
delayed.
Later. We will be watching not only our reaction, but we will see the general reaction.
Yeah.
I am hoping, as the final thing, that this will be successful enough to warrant a HBO Max universe of the Snyderverse. And again, one of the things that people have said, BTT specifically, is that the best hope of a Snyder Cut continuation would be with a Jared Leto Joker thing, potentially with the return of Ben Affleck. First of all, I just want to see Ben Affleck back because that is my Batman and I love him so.
He's good.
So that is something I'd be very excited and hope to see.
It'd be interesting because I think the issue you have is the fact that obviously Matt Reeves' The Batman is getting its own spin-off TV show inside of HBO Max. You've also got the likes of the Green Lantern. Well, he's not on it anymore, is he? But then you've got the fact that the Green Lantern TV show, I think, is HBO Max now. It's no longer CW, even though it's Greg Berlanti. Whether that would be part of this universe, we don't know.
Green Lantern shows Jeff Johns.
Oh, is it? Oh, so it might... Well, no, it won't be them.
So it's not part of the Snyderverse. I don't know if it'll ever be made because I think that was one of the first things, and I think that was announced a few years ago at this point.
Yeah.
And we've had no movement. I think it might be one of the things they quietly shutter away.
But it'll be interesting because obviously, with the likes of the Flashpoint the Flashpoint movie that's coming out, whether that will have because Ben Affleck's been rumored to be in that. Obviously, you've got the likes of Michael Keaton appearing. Whether that will,
I would
continue some vein of.
I would like to ignore Snyderverse in any theatrical form, and they can just do whatever they want in the movies, because at this point it has no continuation, and who cares anymore? Because why has Wonder Woman got superpowers in 1984 when she didn't do any fighting? So they broke it. Fine, they broke the canon.
And also you got
the
Aquaman, which is obviously completely separate as well.
If Aquaman actually ties, I think Aquaman actually doesn't do anything that counters what happens in the movies. Anyway, it's irrelevant. It doesn't make a difference. So my point would be that we have the Snyderverse live out its days on HBO Max, maybe with a Batman series, and Deathstroke specifically, having him be able to return, and someone else, and someone else, and someone else, and it just becomes a sprawling Batman show, which is, I think, the best way to create Batman at this point, as opposed to doing anything else. And I think that would be quite exciting to see, and I would hope to see something like that.
I think it all depends on whether it's successful, doesn't it? I think the talk at the moment, obviously, is that it's just kind of going to be in America, and obviously we don't know what's going to happen over here in the UK, how it's going to be released, even at all internationally.
So there has been,
we just don't know how.
There have been several international regions that have been confirmed how they will access it. The US is HBO Max. Latin America, I can't remember when HBO Max launches, but if it's launched by March 18th, it will be there. Mm-hmm. The UK is the last major retailer consumer in the world to not know how they're going to get Snyder's Justice League. But he did, I believe yesterday, confirm to someone on Twitter or Vero or whatever that an announcement is imminent and is coming. But what I think is really important is if you want to see anything related to Snyder ever again in relation to DC, you need to pay to watch this movie. If you are on HBO Max, you need to repeatedly watch this movie. Yeah. Because
tell them, just like we did with the Snyder Cut, tell them we want this.
Yes. Tweet it. Tweet or anything else. I think I tweeted once in support of release for Snyder Cut on that particular day, that fateful day that turned it all. But if you are interested, if this is something you like, you have to shout about it. Yeah. It will not happen. And I think anyone can see that this is a universe that will exist on social media. It was born, I would say, from social media through the Snyder Cut. And it will now need to be driven through that. You need to support it. It trends repeatedly. It was trending number 17 just because the trailer was coming out that day. Before the trailer came out, it was trending at 17. And I think that shows that it's not high particularly, but it shows that is a serious thing that people are talking about and are invested in. We... From us right now are about a month away. You guys listening will be much closer. And pay in the UK, I'm almost certain it will go to a store of some kind. Either it will just go straight to video on demand, like on iTunes or Amazon or Sky Store for payment. But there is an offside chance that it could be released on Sky Movies for free as like a Sky Movies premiere, or if you have Sky Go.
Could you imagine?
Which would be a really, really, really sneaky way for them to get everyone to subscribe to Sky if it's not available for purchase.
I think
I anticipate for money reasons it'll be available for purchase.
I think the only thing that is more unlikely than that is it going on to Disney Plus.
Oh, I think it will be on Disney Plus. I think like you say Disney Plus, it will not be on Disney Plus. Don't worry. I think if there's an outside chance it could debut on Netflix in the UK, as they have a lot of Warner Bros. It could debut on Amazon, as they have a lot of Warner Bros. I think at this point, because HBO Max is a complicated one. They have a person they announced a month or so ago running the Europe division or something like that. there was a person who was assigned to that role in leadership. So it should hopefully mean, and we've just had the announcement that Latin America is coming soon. I can't remember the date on that. Hopefully Europe is also just around the corner. But until that time, there's no point not giving it to Netflix because they're not competing. If you could hypothetically say, Netflix, you have the rights to this for 1 month, and Netflix would pay them a lot of money for the rights to it for a month. I'm sure.
They'd advertise the crap out of it, and they'd get loads of money for it.
Yeah, they would. So I think there's an outside chance we could see it on a competing service. I think Sky, given it's where Wonder Woman 1984 when it went straight to Sky Store, I think that's the likelihood of where we will see it. We will find out though. And again, do not pirate it if you want more. If you don't want more, don't pirate it. To be rude,
watch it.
Just don't watch it. Simple as. But I hope people will, because I'm interested to see where this thing can go. I think Justice League. I think there is a stagnation to it. I think we just kind of want it. It's been sort of existing literally for years now. First one came out 4 years ago. We kind of just want it now. Yeah. So I think hopefully this will lead to more, especially with Batfleck. I would love if Ben Affleck would come back. Because I think he's an absolutely phenomenal actor, and I'm heartily, we'll talk about this at some point, I'm heartily disappointed he did not direct and write his own movie.
Yeah.
I think it would have been incredible. But anyway, stuff happens. We've moved on. So, let us know down below what you guys think of the Snyder Cut, Zack Snyder's Justice League. Leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe for more. We will have lots of Snyder Cut content coming over the next couple of weeks. Snyderverse content. I don't know what we're going to call it. Follow us on Twitter if you want to interact, or follow us on Instagram. That is all for now, guys. We shall see you next time on the Two Dudes Movie Podcast.
See you soon.